When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Trudy sitting in for Elias, and rest assured the newsroom and our traffic report department are going to stay on top of the consequences of that train derailment on the South Shore. It happened around 9 o'clock this morning in the rail yard at Longueuil, kind of around St. Lambert and Lemoyne, those neighborhoods, because some of the toxic fumes are a little bit worse and coming up after that derailment. There may be a case of some hydrogen peroxide fumes coming off the derailment. And so people who live near the yards are being told to remain indoors for the time being. Our newsroom is on top of that. Turning our attention now to politics south of the border. And you know what? We may be seeing a little bit of the same thing here in Canada as well. What happened to the Democrats, who, as it turned out, did not do very well with some traditional bases of support in the election earlier this month? It looks as though working class people turned away from a traditional party, the Democrats. They looked to the Republicans instead to defend their interests. And with some thoughts on why this happened, we welcome writer, commentator. You see her work in the National Post, GZero Media, Substack, Tasha Kheiriddin. Tasha, thanks for joining us on CJD.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
You're laying out the argument in a new piece of yours that the left has lost contact with one of its key historical bases of support, and that is the working class. How has this come to be? How have progressive politics morphed into identity politics?
Well, in the past, progressive movements really made their name advocating for workers' rights and very basic things like, safe working conditions, reasonable hours, fair pay, breaks, time off, eradication of poverty. They really were championing, the working man as it was most of the time, but also then women. And they moved into the space of fighting for women's rights, equality, right to vote. American progressives championed the suffrage of the Black American, Indigenous American, equality for same-sex couples. So over time, they moved from just the workers' rights to the different kinds of workers actually that were out there, and they became associated with those things. And then more recently, things really moved into what you said, the identity politics space. It's not even about equality for people, which it used to be. It's about equity. And equity is a term that really is more about getting to the same result as opposed to giving everyone the same equal recognition, equal chances, opportunities, and letting them, do with that what they will. It's more the type of social engineering that people on the right decry, and that is traditional for more, I would say hardcore left Marxist sort of thought. And that's what the modern Democratic Party has been very concerned with things, identity, like, denouncing white privilege, racial quotas in universities and workplaces. They applaud that sort of thing. The promotion of trans rights became, I think, actually one of the big issues in this campaign. We could talk more about it in a way that they maybe didn't anticipate, but instead of being seen as just fighting for the rights of individuals, it became seen as antithetical to women's rights in some places. And as a result, they pitted one of their own groups, women, against, trans people within their movement. And by focusing so much on those issues, they ignored the bread and butter stuff that I talked about at the beginning. They became really all about those kinds of really more niche interests than about, hey, fair pay for a day's work and being able to put food on the table. So their raison d'etre has changed so much. The average worker who's concerned with the basic stuff looks at them and says, "You're not fighting for me."
I wonder if a lot of women arrived at that conclusion it just because of the trans rights arguments, because we've seen this become a big issue in some other places. Certainly, we saw it with the author of Harry Potter coming out. She considers herself a staunch feminist and has been very vocal about some aspects of the trans rights movement. Do you think women in large numbers fell away from the Democrat Party because of this?
Well, I think certain groups did. You did see an increase statistically. The exit polls showed Black women voted for Kamala Harris more than they did last time for Joe Biden. White women, interestingly enough, also voted. They voted less for Trump than they did the first time around. White men as well. Trump's vote actually went slightly down among white Americans. But the group that really moved for Trump, there were two, and one was Black men who moved towards Trump, and the biggest one was Latino men and women. And to your point, the issue of trans rights or promoting transgender equity, I won't even call it equality, but equity, was a very sore spot for a lot of Latino voters. It was actually, I've seen it in interviews, they said just, like, this is not what we feel is right. And I think a lot of Latino women also, that was one of the big moving groups among women that moved to Trump, was that sense that you're talking about. Because unlike, LGBT rights issues in the past, giving gay couples the right to marry doesn't take away anything from heterosexual couples. It just puts them on the same plane. But giving transgender individuals the rights to compete in sports against women, for example, does take away women's rights because they have a biological advantage women cannot counter in many cases. And so this is what was not seen by the progressives. It actually divides. And to your point, I think some women looked at this and said, you know what, I hate the abortion stuff. I think I'm worried about that, but this matters more to me. So the Democrats, I think their heavy emphasis on women, abortion, that spoke to a subset of women, but there were other women who said, wait a minute, the other stuff matters more, and the Republicans are talking about that.
Faulty priority setting there, I guess. What is your sense of how this is going to play out as Canada prepares for a national election in not too many months? I mean, it's not tomorrow, we think, but it's relatively soon in political terms.
Yeah, I think in Canada it's really interesting because what we've seen is, the popular thought was Trudeau was waiting for Trump to be elected so he could make him the boogeyman, and by association make Pierre Poilievre the boogeyman. The Conservatives are just, Republicans in conservative clothing. They're the same. We don't want that. Trump's going to do all sorts of awful things, and that's going to make me look good by comparison. I think what we're actually seeing now is a big concern in Canada about standing up to the U.S. Like, that's becoming our concern. It's not even so much about what Trump is going to do in the States. It's how it affects us, and notably on trade, on migration, and also on, I think, the sort of the defense piece that's not as much of a ballot box issue, but we're going to have to spend more money and pay more attention to our military. So I think those the first two in particular, Trudeau has got, he's got to figure out how to get Canada's best interest and what we need to do, and particularly on migration. We need to act now to secure our borders. They are not secure. Chrystia Freeland, it's laughable that she says they're secure. The Americans themselves, Bob Homan, who was just appointed as the basic border czar in the U.S., has said that we are a vulnerability. Canada is a big vulnerability. They're looking at us with very, nasty eyes. So unless Trudeau can stand up to that and show that he is going to figure out how to deal with that, I don't think that Trump's election is going to help him. It could actually hurt him, because I think a lot of people here will say, we need someone who can deal with Trump, and who is the stronger person? Who would he respect? A lot of people in Trump's cabinet do not respect Trudeau. They've said it openly on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. So I think that it actually might play against Trudeau that Trump has now won the election.
Although, is Pierre Poilievre not really seen as a fellow traveler on that road? Maybe not as far down the road, but on the same road?
Well, I don't think on the abortion piece, definitely not seen as that. The Liberals would like him to be, but it's not been the case that the Conservatives have restricted abortion in the last, I don't say how many years. In fact, the last bill they had was in the 80s to talk about abortion in the House. I don't think so, actually. This is what originally, yes, you would think that. I think a lot of people in this country are now terrified of waves of migrants coming from the U.S. We have a housing crisis in this country. People are already turning against immigration. It's very dangerous for a country like Canada. We cannot afford to fall into xenophobia and all those nasty places. And unless we prevent a crisis from happening by toughening the border now so people don't come across it in the first place, we're going to have serious social problems. And I don't see Trudeau doing that. I don't know. I worry he will not do that. So who would do that? Maybe we need someone who, would say, hey, I'm going to stand up for Canada and deal with this. And so I think in that space, because that's going to be the key issue, I think Poilievre might actually come out ahead.
Tasha Kheiriddin, thanks very much for sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you. Bye, Trudy.
Bye-bye. Tasha Kheiriddin, writer, commentator. You see her work in the National Post, Substack, GZero Media.